Arizona State coming into a matchup against Fresno State, 1-1 on the season, and it's safe to say that nothing went right for this football team, so much so that Kenny Dillingham said this was the worst game from an offensive perspective that he had ever been a part of as a coach, many years as a quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator. 29-0, the Sun Devils get blanked by the Bulldogs of Fresno State, accompanied by 8 turnovers by the offense of Arizona State. Here with House of Sparky, Matt Venezia, Jack Pearson. That's exactly where we're starting. So much inconsistency from the quarterback position. We saw 3 different QBs not named Jaden Rashada in there tonight. And it's just a lot to unpack, Jack.
Fresno State came out and looked like the better, faster, more dominant team right out of the gates, going on a long touchdown drive where they just pounded Arizona State. But Arizona State had, like you said, had no offensive rhythm tonight. I mean, it was a disaster for this team that came in kind of like an injured animal. So many injuries on this offensive line. Now you got Jaden Rashada, who's injured. 3 different quarterbacks play. We saw Bourguet get injured in the first few drives that he was involved in. Drew Pine apparently has an injury that's lingering, and he was out. So we got all the way to Jacob Conover tonight, which was a surprise to Kenny Dillingham. This offense had no rhythm tonight, and it was very unfortunate to see here.
Well, let's start where things started for Arizona State. It was Trenton Bourguet, the backup to Rashada, getting the start because of the injury that wasn't released to the media and out to the public until yesterday. He was 6 of 8, 57 yards was Bourguet, and then after kind of botching a snap a little bit, he kind of rolls up his ankle. We've seen that foot of his previous injuries and surgeries throughout his tenure at Arizona State that knocked him out of the game, and it was a Notre Dame transfer, Drew Pine, who came in. He had a pair of fumbles, a pair of interceptions, and that's kind of when things really went downhill for ASU.
Yeah, maybe it was kind of clear from the get-go that Jaden Rashada was the most comfortable player in this offense because we saw how fragile and kind of flustered that these other quarterbacks got when they got into bad situations on the football field, and that's just what we haven't seen from Jaden Rashada. So it was really, really surprising to this Arizona State team when he wasn't out there on the football field. It was a completely different team. This offense, again, had no rhythm. Kenny Dillingham in the presser just said they would have been better off just punting the football every single time because they were just punching them or shooting themselves in the foot basically on offense.
It was a 5 of 13 effort, 52 yards gathered by Drew Pine. A total of 4 turnovers accredited to number 10 for Arizona State tonight. Finally, Jacob Conover comes in, and when he gets in, you're thinking maybe this could get a little bit better, but he had 2 turnovers to his name as well. And what was overall just a fluster, so much so that the fans were chanting for Herrera, the freshman quarterback walk-on, to get into this ball game, Jack. This gives me Eastern Michigan vibes in terms of just a ton of chaos. We saw Herm Edwards very awkwardly in that press conference, and then the following day get relinquished of his duties. Today, you just didn't really know what Kenny was going to say, but he addressed it right on the nose, saying the offense has got to get better, and he says it falls on him to make that happen.
Yeah, and he's not blaming these injuries in the offensive line. I mean, he was listing off, and he even forgot some. He couldn't even name all the guys that were injured. That's how badly injured that this team is. So it's really, really hard for Kenny Dillingham right now to get his team in a good spot. It's not an easy position for him to be in right now, but he's taking accountability and saying that he just got to worry about who's available on Monday, who's available on Tuesday and Wednesday, and who's going to be out there on Saturday. That is the only thing he can worry about right now, and nobody cares about these injuries other than him inside that locker room.
Well, Jack, it's funny you say that because Kenny Dillingham said at the end in the press conference that once he saw Joey Ramos go down and roll up himself with a handful of plays left in the ballgame, that's when he said, we're done. We're not trying to score anymore because of so many injuries. He said if there was one more injury on the offensive line, Arizona State would not have been able to practice going into tomorrow because they wouldn't have enough guys on the scout team to prepare for a whole other animal in USC. We'll talk about that matchup and the rest of the Pac-12 in a little bit. To talk about Fresno State, Mikey Keene aired it out, and he aired it out real well today. 32 of 49, 2 touchdowns to his name. The Bulldogs, we give credit where it's due. The defense helped them get the ball in the offensive hands, and the Bulldogs really look good airing that football out tonight.
They did, and really the score should have been even worse than it was. They had to settle for some field goals just due to some penalties. But yeah, this offense was able to storm down the field. But I think it was just due to the 8 turnovers that Arizona State had. They were shooting themselves in the foot, like I said, and putting their defense in bad positions. And that defense had to have been tired. I mean, it felt like they were on the football field for almost the entirety of this football game. So it was really, really a tough situation. And Arizona State just failed miserably tonight. There's just no other way to go around it.
the Sun Devils came in as one of the better in the top quarter of the Pac-12 in total defense. And as you mentioned, Jack, 29 points against on 8 turnovers from your offense. That defense was out there the majority of this ball game, Jack. And the Sun Devils certainly kept things respectable. It was 16-0 at halftime when you already had, I believe, 4 turnovers at that point in the ball game. Yet to still be down by 2 scores, it was definitely very surprising. And for some reason, you think that there could have been a chance to maybe somehow win that ball game, but the second half got off pretty rough. And we talked about the turnovers. Defensive back Carlton Jacobs for Fresno State.
Wow.
3 interceptions to his name.
Great game for him.
He was just absolutely just something else. Just was reading the eye of Drew Pine and, Conover for that matter, really, really well. He was a problem for ASU tonight.
He was all over the field. I mean, that was one of the most outstanding players tonight on the football field for Fresno State. But looking ahead now, Matt, we have USC next week here at this stadium for the Arizona State Sun Devils. They will be without Jaden Rashada once again, as Kenny just announced inside this press conference that he will be out 4 to 6 weeks as he's been dealing with the injury that apparently he had in high school, and it's kind of lingering now from the game last week.
And none of it was really kind of confirmed until yesterday. Still, the severity of the injury, we don't really even know. It's just that the fact that he's out tonight, and now we know it's going to be a lot longer than that. So the media getting a chance to, I guess, ask that question right up in front at the end of this game. And now it really leads into the question of who is going to be available, because Bourguet re-aggravating that foot. Then apparently Drew Pine dealt with a muscle issue, and that's why he left the game, not because of performance. So you look at Jacob Conover, and you look at potentially Herrera as it's a mess right now with what Arizona State's dealing with. Meanwhile, the Trojans are going to come in as an undefeated football team. The reigning Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams. We saw what happened last year when ASU went out to the Coliseum. This time that matchup is in Tempe, and the rest of the Pac-12 as now conference season gets going, Jack. It's going to be an uphill battle, and it starts next week.
Yeah, this conference is better than I think a lot of people expected, Matt. I mean, we knew about USC, we knew about Utah, we knew about Oregon, but Colorado is ranked, and they just won tonight. They're going to be moving up the leaderboards. Cal is looking actually really, really good this season. To be honest, Matt, you have to ask the question now, where is Arizona State going to get another win this season? Because I don't know if they'll be favored in another game this season, the way that the injuries have gone and the way that this team has looked on the football field.
The Sun Devils were 3.5-point underdogs tonight entering this matchup with the Bulldogs, falling 29-0. Kenny Dillingham and his guys fall to 1-2. And as we mentioned, the Trojans, it doesn't get any easier, come into town next week for ASU, trying to just salvage themselves right now. Again, the injuries are the biggest problem. On a game like tonight with all the turnovers, it's kind of a matter of what? Just packing it in and just trying to move on to the next day.
Yeah, it is. And like Kenny said, he's just got to worry about what he has right now. He's not going to make any excuses. He's going to have his guys ready, and he says that the offense will be fixed. He said it might not be tomorrow, it might not be the next day, but this offense will look better by the end of the season.
We'll see how the quarterbacks look into going into that USC matchup, but some of them are going to get some imaging done to just confirm whether, it's long-term injuries or not. But what we do know, as we mentioned, 4 to 6 weeks, that's a big storyline. Jaden Rashada will be out 4 to 6 weeks for Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham said that the priority is trying to salvage his redshirt ability. Only 2 games for Rashada to this point. So by the time that season kind of dwindles down, as long as he doesn't hit that cap, Rashada could still be credited with that redshirt ability. That's the factor right now that you got to keep an eye on with the true freshman quarterback who's now going to be out a long time. But we will see you next week when Pac-12 conference play gets underway. The Sun Devils and the Trojans will take place here at Mountain America Stadium. But until then, from House of Sparky, Jack Pearson, Matt Venezia, we will see you then as the Sun Devils fell tonight 29-0 to the Bulldogs. So long, and we'll see you next week.